Hello, thank you so much for taking the time today to take a look at our case analysis for the NBA. We are Team 3. My name is Kevin. I have Juliet, Michael, and Osap with me today to talk about this case. Just quickly taking a look at our overview here, we're going to start off with our introduction, give you a little bit of content and context of our case. Then we'll go into the research review that we've done for this case, and then explain the results, areas of growth, and the conclusion as well. Jumping right in here for our introduction. In this case, we analyzed the NBA's crisis response after the backlash from the Chinese government over a tweet that the Houston Rockets general manager sent out in support of the protests in Hong Kong. The NBA defended that free speech and attempted to de-escalate those tensions while maintaining its CSR values. And despite facing those negative financial consequences, the league took a principled stand, which we believe as a result is why we're arguing the NBA handled the situation correctly. With that, here's a little bit of context on what the tweets were about. So Daryl Morey, who is the general manager of the Houston Rockets, sent out this image, first of all, on October 4th, saying, "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong." Afterwards, he received backlash as well as the NBA. So 3 days afterwards, he sent out 2 subsequent tweets talking about how this messaging on the 4th was not meant to offend any Chinese fans, or it was not the official standing of the NBA, and that it was a misunderstanding and understands the impact of those words in the initial tweet as well. With all of that in mind, we continued with our research review. So we took a look at 3 fundamental pillars of the NBA, which first of all was their business model, their corporate social responsibility impacts, and also their corporate DNA. We tied all of that together and produced our positioning on this incident. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Juliet to talk about our business model of the NBA.
Yeah, so the business model revolves around 5 key elements, starting with revenue streams. Their revenue comes from multiple sources, including media rights, merchandise sales, ticket sales, sponsorships, and licensing fees. But the biggest portion comes from sports broadcasting companies. In addition to that, the NBA operates on a franchise model, meaning that they allow individual teams to own and operate their own businesses, as well as providing a framework for teams to compete, including rules and regulations. The NBA invests heavily in player development as well, with programs such as the NBA Academy, which provides coaching and training for young players around the world. They also expanded to reach internationally with a focus on developing markets in countries like China and India, which helped generate additional revenue from their international audience. Lastly, the NBA has a strong commitment to social responsibility, which relates to our next topic of the NBA's CSR objectives. So first we start with DEI, in which the NBA has made a strong commitment in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, both within the league and in the broader community. In addition to that, the NBA has taken steps to implement green initiatives, signing the UN's Sports for Climate Action Framework, as well as cutting emissions in half by 2030 and aim for net zero in 2040. Lastly, the NBA has a strong focus on promoting health and wellness for its players, employees, and fans. They've partnered with the American Heart Association to promote heart health and implemented mental health and wellness programs for its players and staff. And lastly, we move on to corporate DNA. The NBA has a long history of supporting players' right to free expression, which may have influenced the response to the Morey tweets in support of the Hong Kong protests. As the NBA defines their mission, inspire and connect people everywhere through the power of basketball, their core values include leading with integrity, being the fan, creating community, and innovating with intention across all of their networks. These values reflect the NBA and their commitment to promoting positive social and environmental impact through its business activities. Next, I'll pass it off to Ostap to talk about our positioning.
Thank you, Juliet. Following Morey's tweet, the NBA took a position that defended the free speech of employees, players, and team owners. The NBA claimed that it would not regulate what they say or not say. The league demonstrated that their stance for principles is far more important than financial interests. In a statement, the league claimed that they would not pursue profits over principles, which reflects their stance on the international tension with China. The NBA ultimately hopes to de-escalate tension between China, as they made a statement claiming that they hope to find common ground between both parties to be a unifying force and bridge between cultural divides. However, following Morey's tweet, relationships were strained with Chinese businesses, causing the NBA to lose millions in potential revenue. The NBA's response was consistent with their CSR values demonstrated in the past. The NBA has a history of supporting social justice causes, and despite facing losses, the NBA continues to stand for its core values and principles. To represent this, the NBA believes in transparency and integrity as the best approach to solve problems, which is portrayed by their thought-out statements. Next, we'll move on to the results following the incident. As a result of our research, we've learned that Chinese businesses cut ties with the NBA following the tweet. All companies on the NBA's list of Chinese sponsors suspended ties with the league. The NBA also faced an impact from less Chinese viewership. There was also an instance where managers were required to pull Rockets merchandise from the shelves at Shanghai and Beijing Nike. NBA fans also showed concern for the situation. In another instance, at a game against the Chinese Basketball Association, 2 fans were escorted out of the arena after holding up signs and cheering for the protests. This portrays that a variety of stakeholders felt involved in the situation. Celebrities also showed concern, as Shaq and LeBron didn't want to enter a feud, but they claimed that Morey should have been more careful with this tweet, and that they still showed support for his actions. Next, I'll give it to Michael to further talk about the results of this incident.
Thank you. So this graph shows us that the NBA total revenue from 2001 to 2021, it has been growing since the Morey incident. As mentioned, NBA has been taking advantage of globalization and expanding to different countries. While China is one of the major market expansion, a lot of Chinese businesses cut ties with the NBA after the incident, which resulted in a loss of 0.8 billion in revenue in the 2019 and 2020 season. Move on to area of growth. Although NBA took initiative to respond to the public right after the incident, we believe there are 3 areas for growth. First of all, better communication. The NBA could have communicated more effectively with its stakeholders to explain its position and the importance of free speech. Second of all, being consistent. The NBA could have been more consistent in its messaging and actions regarding social justice and political issues. In this case, they can prioritize on corporate social responsibility and its own value. Last but not least, they need to plan ahead. NBA should take this experience and develop more comprehensive crisis management to tackle any kind of similar situation in the future. Now I'm going to pass on to Kevin.
Thank you, Michael, for that. And with all of the research we've done, we believe that by defending freedom of speech, attempting to de-escalate tensions with China, and staying consistent with its CSR values, that the NBA handled the Morey incident correctly. The NBA's response, showing its willingness to compromise and find common ground with Chinese partners while being consistent with its CSR values, demonstrates its commitment to transparency, integrity, and most importantly, social justice. And with that, we thank you for listening to our presentation, and we appreciate any feedback you may have.